Welcome to part 2 of the videos. We've got a couple things to mention first before we dive in. First thing is, if you're using an older Cubase, meaning older than Cubase 13, you may have some issues getting the full amount of new inputs available to Divisimate 2. Divisimate 1 had 32 inputs, but now it's inside your DAW as a plugin down here. And you can click on any of the 32 standard inputs and it will let you enable 16 more inputs for every original input, meaning you can have over 500 instruments in Divisimate 2. Then of course your problem will be CPU power and not the available amount of inputs. So I thought I'd mention that. Make sure you know what a version of Cubase you're at. If you're using one that is older, there's a way around it. According to their website, you'll have to look into that. For now, 32 is fine for me. If you have the newer Cubase, you're good to go with as many inputs as you could possibly want. Let's turn this back off, and we're back down to 32 inside Cubase. As stated before, we're starting from scratch, but if you don't want to start from scratch and you want to get up and running with the VSL and with Divisimate, VSL makes the VSL Prime system, and that's a bunch of orchestral instruments. It's a bit pricey, but VSL is known to have some of the best samples in the industry, and I really like them. I already have some VSL, so I don't think I'm going to get the Prime Edition just for the sake of convenience. But you could get the Prime Edition, which has hooked up with Divisimate, has created beautiful presets. So you load the presets, you have the VSL Prime Edition, and you're pretty much good to plug and play and get some instant gratification. Only problem is you'll want to create your own, and you'll want to edit some of the presets, and you won't know how the system works, and you'll just get completely frustrated. So with a system, open system like Divisimate, it's almost a necessity to know what the ground rules are. It has a unique system, it's powerful, but it's unique, and it has a certain way to do things. So we're going to look at some of those today. All right, I'm going to run it with the scalar 3 as inputs, but we'll get to that in a second. So we know it's a plugin inside your DAW now, so we can look at it, Divisimate down here, and we can see that it does have inputs. You can play Divisimate by your hands on your keyboard, and you can also use something like a Remedy real-time system to drive it and play it. And you can use apparently scalar 3, as I'm going to demonstrate, to drive the Divisimate system, but it's all about understanding what you're doing. So we have that hooked up. Now, there's still no sound in Divisimate because Divisimate, I don't know if some people don't know this, but it really has no internal sounds of its own. It is open-ended, so it can take any system you already have, any VSTI, strings, instruments, whatever, from Berlin Orchestra, from Spitfire. You plug them in, all your favorite instruments, how you like, in whatever form, into Divisimate to get the sound. Let's do that now. Input number 1 is up here, and we can grab our violins 1 from the VSL to show off and demonstrate. It's good to use strings because the Divisi and Divisimate started with dividing up input into more orchestral, real type of sound, of orchestration. So we're going to use strings to demo. Now, violins 1 is ready to go. It's on. I need to route it to port 1. We go to its input, or its routing of the violins. We go here. We see that, okay, Divisimate port 1 should be here somewhere. I don't want to look through all the different ports. I want to go up here. Cubase has a way to find it quickly. Type in 01, and now we find it really here quickly because that's the way that system works, a quick finder. Hit it, and now we have Divisimate port 1 as the input for this violin, which is, if I drag it in here, it's basically a VSTI sampled instrument. It's on a legato articulation with some vibrato. It's a nice sounding instrument, a great violin. But we want to have violin 1, violin 2, 3, cello, or viola and cello and double bass. So we do a similar thing. We already have them named here. You can double click on any track and you can name it what you want. It gives you plenty of room, so when you build a big orchestration, you can get into detail saying this is violin 1 from the VSL and it's a sustained articulation. You have plenty of room to do that because you'll need to keep track of these big orchestrations. All right, so we've already got violin 2 hooked up to port 2 and violas to port 3, on and on. So we have 5 instruments set up, ready to go, but they're not hooked up inside Divisimate yet. So if I play, I still don't hear anything. So now we have them connected externally. We connect them in time inside the Divisimate. Go to your first activated note, scroll up to the grid, hit it. That turns on the connection. Violin strings is being controlled by the first one input on the keyboard, one note. Play. Okay, that's what we want. So that's how the basic works of the system. Now, of course, you want to play at least a triad, a chord. So you would activate the second note for that chord and you would assign it to the second violin just by hitting the grid there. Now, if you play 2 notes, you'll hear both notes, each one hitting the right violin. Let's go for the triad. So we want the viola. And now to demonstrate, we're going to use scalar from here on. And I've set it up to give us beautiful triads that are played in a register for our demonstration here. And I simply did that by, again, grabbing any key, F, grabbed the F minor this time, dragged it down to the main interface down here, which gets us to the grid. And now we can say, we can look at it, what we have, and we have exactly that. Nice 3-note triads in a register that is great for where we want it. You can move it up and down. I've lowered it an octave, and you could also voice it or do auto voice leading to keep everything in a register that is nice for our demonstration. So I'm going to I've got the loop on, and I'm going to start to play it, and you'll just see the basics of how this runs. I'll move this to the side. Now let's play what we have. Scalar 3 input into Divisimate, 3 notes at a time. Okay, so now we have that working. We've got all 3 of those. If it's hard to not move this to the side, but just for the sake of looking. So you can see we have violins 1, 2, and viola going right here. They're moving, they're being activated. All right, so let's get into some of the more complex aspects here. Since we have 3-note chords going in, we of course can have up to 8 notes of a chord. So you can have a very complex 2-handed chord being played into Divisimate. So you would just activate how many notes you're going to be playing in, and the Divisimate system will musically turn that into a more realistic orchestration for your instruments, which are activated up here or down here or wherever. So now what we want to do is say, okay, what happens if you play a 4-note chord, like add a 7th, and it still only has 3? The system will compensate. So to show this in a different light, let's activate the fourth, which would be the cello. So now we have 4 lanes active. It's Divisimate set up to receive 4 notes, but we're still just going to play 3-note triads into it. And let's see what happens. If I can move this to the side, we can see the input voices moving on our meters here, and you'll be able to see what happens. So let's play it. So what you're seeing is violins 2, violas, and the cello being played, and nothing else. So it's still just taking 3 notes and it's not compensating, but there's buttons for it to help compensate. So if we use the fill voices compensation button here, it will attempt to fill in that 4th voice in a musical way. So again, now we play the same thing, and we should see all 4 of these instruments lighting up and playing. Let's see if it does it. And it does. So now we have 4 instruments that are going into the system. It's making up for that lost note. So we have other options here. Let's say, well, what if we want to prioritize the top-down notes? So the first 3 notes will take priority, and they will try to keep those going, and you may not see the cello in this case activated. Let's see. And that's exactly what we get. It's not filling in voices now. It's simply taking priority of the first 3 notes in the system. If we go bottom down, we should see the opposite. We should see the cello now and the viola and violins 2 light up and be active. And that's what we get. Now, I hope you kind of see how this works. So it has the ability to compensate for missing input notes, and it has the ability to compensate what you want to have priority in, your higher notes or your bottom notes. The reason they kind of do this, I imagine, is because you're not always playing, when you're playing live, you're not always playing triads. You may just have a 2-note chord. You may play a triad with a 7th, so that would be 4 notes. You may add 5 notes. So this system tries to compensate musically the best it can according to the rules you have set up. So let's set it to fill voices. Let's add the double bass, and the reason the line is gray is because this isn't turned on in the button down here. Now it's connected and activated. It will attempt to fill in all the missing voices. We're still just playing the triad. So you see it's filled in the missing voices, and it's even playing the double bass now. Even though there's no real notes, the triad is still just a triad going in, but it's musically making up for it, activating all 5 instruments. Okay, let me take a breath here. And next we're going to look at melody. What if you want to have a separate melody, not in the Divisi system, and you want to have a separate low note? The way you would do that is you would say, well, this top note now, I don't want it part of the Divisi system. I want it part of the melody system, which we activate here. Turn this on. We get a register control button, or slider. This will control which notes are captured by the melody as a melody. We go up the line, up the grid again, and we turn it on by clicking the grid. Now our first violin is actually a melody. It's going to the melody, which is not part of the Divisi system. So now we have an empty first note here. And if we want to clean up everything, we could simply just drag. Now you can drag and delete in Divisi 2. We delete those, and now we say violin 2, we want it to be our first string. There, I had to hit it twice for some reason. And we want the viola and the rest of the instruments to be in that fashion. So now we have the 4 that will be using Divisi. We have the violins 1, which is separated now, and we don't need that 5th note right now. And later we're going to turn on the low note for the double bass. First things first, let's play what we hear now. We're not going to hear really anything in the melody. It's still going to be just the triad that's going to be compensating for the 4th note. But the melody note, we're going to have to add that to get a proper melody. So we can just play what we get now, and then and that's what we get. We don't get the first violin really playing anything because there's nothing in this register in this area to be picked up as a melody. So now we're going to do that. We've got it set up here inside of Scalar 3. I've got a little melody here, which I'm going to drag in. And that was quite simply made by just using the melody device and moving some notes around. It's nothing spectacular. It's simply for demonstration. So now we have a total of 4 notes. We have the triad up here from our chords. We have a 4th higher note in the register for the melody. Now this melody should be picking up something, and we can adjust it as we need with a transposer if we need. Let's play. And that's exactly what we get. So that's how we could do that. We could have these strings, if they're too high, we could say transpose, hitting the button here. We have these buttons for different plugins within this plugin. And one of them is transposer. We have an ARP. We got transformer. So if we transpose it, we can say, no, we want that to be lowered down by 1 octave. We could change it by semitones. We have it locked to a global scale, but we just want it to affect, in this case, the melody. Lots of controls here. This alone could probably take a video. So now let's listen to it now and see if we've changed anything. We've got it down an octave. It should sound, the melody should sound lower, but it should still be separated from the Divisi engine here. Let's see what we get. And that's what we get. But I like it a little higher register, so we'll just delete that. We can keep this transposer activated so we don't have to activate it again. And you can select something you have set up, and you can hit your Alt key on your keyboard, and you can drag, and you can just copy whatever plugin you have. So that's a good way to just edit and copy ideas really quick. So it should be back to its original register. Let's start from the top. Yeah, I like that better for now. And so now we have a melody. It's separated from the main Divisi engine, and we have still room to do something in the lower register and control our bass note. And we activate the bass note by going up to our double bass, and which is there. And we can turn it off of the main system. And now we still have the triad. We can turn this button off. We have the triad that is separated, Divisi, but we have total control over the melody and the bass track. And to show that, we're going to drag in a quick bass line here that was just created in Scalar 3 with a bass track. Or I think I used a chord follow and deleted the top notes regardless. And let's go here and see what we get in this situation. And again, we can control the range of that bass note, and we can add a transposer if we need it. Let's play. Okay, so we're getting what we want and what we expect out of this engine. And that's pretty much it for this video. From here, the power starts to show itself, because once you understand how the basics work, where your chords should be, how many different, you could have very complex chords in here. We just have a triad for our main Divisi here. But again, you could make very complex chords inside the middle of this engine here. You could have complete control of your bass note, meaning that you could have all these different plugins just hitting your bass note or your melody, right? So as an example, before we go, we'll just say that, okay, what if we want our cello or our viola, because it's separated and we have control over it, we could say, oh, I want to put an ARP on that. I'm going into the VSL right to the instrument level. I'm going to switch it to a short note, and off we go. Now we got a short articulation. We have this ARP, which is very deep. I would say the first page of it is at least as deep as what you would get in the Orchestra Complete 3. And very similar to Opus. Opus has a different way of doing it, but the same idea. But we have the ability to solo, and we have the ability to go to an expert mode. Before I go to expert mode, I'll say that even in the basic mode, you have your velocity, which we know how these ARPs work from other programs, but it can go up to 3 pages deep, meaning about 48. I think if you click and switch up here on the 3rd page, I think it's 48 beats deep, meaning you can create presets that if you just hold down a triad or some notes, you can have different things happening up to 48 beats deep into your held chord. Of course, you're not necessarily want to do that, but there may be some chords in your real-time play or preset, certain chords that you want to just evolve, and you could have certain rhythms come and go. You could have some short horns activate, and maybe at deep into it of maybe 20 beats into your preset, and you could have strings come and go, because you cannot just have the velocity, but you can have any CC value, including mod wheel, expression, sustain, anything. You can just scroll through. And so you can have this, and you have many different layers of it. So I could go and say, now I want to actually have control over, and this is a little bit, they need to slow down the action here, because it's, as I scroll, I want to hit CC11 for expression. And you can write in, just as I showed in the video, or you probably already know, you can write in how strings or sustain articulations will evolve. And like I just said, 3 pages deep. So, that's a lot of musical time to develop musical ideas in envelopes of your sustain, of your expression, of your mod wheel. So to wrap it up, let's look at what we've learned. When you input notes and musical ideas into Divisimate in the right way, understanding the engine, there really is almost unlimited possibilities, as every one of these now instruments will be controlled with Divisi engine, but also you can not just move it up and down in a register of an octave, but you can now start moving harmonies against each other, meaning you could take violin 1 and just move it a couple semitones up. So now that it's harmonizing with what you have as violin 2 and other instruments. And so you could have every one of these inputs can be harmonized in a different way, locked to a scale. You can have all kinds of movement and rhythm, and there are other plugins for triggering and repeating, transforming. It's really, really deep. A lot of this is way above my head already. But I hope this video showing you the basics gives you that understanding to at least decide if this is for you or not. You may not want or need such control. I like it so because it allows you to dig in deep and really create something unique, deep, and harmonically interesting as your real-time chords evolve in this bigger, grand idea. Hope you're able to make music wherever you're at in the world today, and we shall see you on the next video.